pale, white face. A terror unlike any other. A haunting representation of the uncanny valley. And no two slashers embody this horror more than Michael Myers, the hatred-fueled patient from Haddonfield of Halloween, and Jeff the Killer, the everlasting smile wearer of the Creepypasta World. For this debate, we'll be using a variety of sources for each combatant. Michael Myers' analysis will mostly focus on the current timeline, although feats from previous incarnations will be considered if the main timeline has similar actions or through reasonable doubt. Jeff's analysis will include both the original story, the remake, and while we won't be including all other derivative works that have something to do with Jeff, his encounters with Slender Man and Jane the Killer will be considered in this video. So join us as we look at their weapons, armor, and skill to find out who would win a fiction collision. Halloween. A wonderful holiday where children and teens alike roam their hometowns in hopes of collecting huge sums of sugary sweets. For one child, however, the Halloween of 1963 would be remembered not for adventures with friends, but the execution of family. At just 6 years of age, Michael Myers brutally stabbed his sister to death, and with his actions, a figure of pure terror was created. After 15 years of ineffective psychiatry, Michael was taken out of his doctor's hands. As he was being prepared to go to court, he escaped, stole the car he was to be transferred in, killed a random man, and took his suit, and was gone. Halloween was coming, and it would be the night he came home. After returning to Haddonfield, Michael stalked a group of teen babysitters, and as All Hallows Eve arrived, so too did the boogeyman. 4 citizens were killed that night, and with their passing, the legend of Michael Myers grew more terrifying. He would attempt to murder the remaining babysitter, Laurie Strode, but she would persist. Myers' Dr. Loomis would arrive in time to fire upon Michael, seemingly killing him. But the death of Michael Myers would not take place that night, nor would it seemingly ever, no matter who tried. However immortal he may seem though, he knows when he's in over his head, thus how he ended up in another psych ward for 40 more years. That it was until he was being transferred and escaped. Again. After returning to Haddonfield once more, Michael returned to his rampage, and in one night, he killed dozens of people. That's right, despite being 61, Michael was able to stomp a man's head like a pumpkin, having some of his fingers being blasted off. He's got to be one of the toughest humans in the history of humans. That is, if he's actually human. See, it is said that every time Michael kills, the more he transcends. Laurie says as much after seeing still capable of even after 40 years. Which makes complete sense for even an old Michael to still be this absurd. Younger, alternate timeline Myerses could perform similar feats, doing a seriously impressive one-armed pull-up, lifting a man off the ground single-handedly, ram his thumb into a man's forehead, or even smash a man's head into a steel door so hard it comes off its hinges. But does this current timeline Michael have anything similar to those feats? As Laurie said, with each kill, Michael becomes more and more evil. After his initial bus escape, it only took him 2 kills before he was capable of ripping a man's jaw from his head and snapping a poor podcaster's neck while he held him in the air. Even more kills later, and he's casually taking a bullet to the neck, having his fingers blasted off, before taking on at least a dozen firefighters. Not only that, but he was able to shrug off being hit several times with a bag of bricks, completely rotated an 18-year-old's neck around, and a door getting ganged up on by more than a dozen townsfolk. Bats, boards, pipe wrenches, and even a knife to the part where the spine meets the skull. That being said, he got himself in a position where he was not able to beat the group off in that moment. Why? He's so slow, literally walking after prey instead of chasing them down. And as strong as he is, he's not perfect. He wasn't able to get out of what Laurie thought would be his final resting place without having the floor cave in. He also was tricked into this faux prison fairly easily. Not only that, but as much as he is a pain sponge, he's not soaking in a ton of damage all at once. Rather, he's taking serious injuries with breaks of several minutes in between. And while his killing sprees are impressive, he didn't exactly break out 40 years later as if that was some master plan. The same could be said in the Thorns timeline, when he had to be helped escape jail by the leader of the cult. All the same, if you were so unfortunate as to be in his way when he is roaming the streets of Haddonfield, may God have mercy on you. There is a reason he is feared. There is a reason he is considered an unkillable evil. There is a reason he is called the Shape. For only the devil exists in his eyes, and not even hell will have him.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Moving into a new town can be difficult as a child, especially when the school bullies want your lunch money, the neighbors are unbearable, and screw you, Dad, you don't understand! But it wouldn't be all bad for one Jeffrey Woods, as he had the company of his younger brother Lou. That wasn't until one run-in with the bullies led to a scrappy brawl at the bus stop where Jeff was given a taste of his inner demons. Of course, since you can't just brutalize some kids, the cops would eventually get involved, and despite his best efforts to turn himself over, faithful Lou took the fall for him. Having no contact with Lou, no friends to hang out with, there was just sadness and grief. Jeffrey Woods would drift into loneliness. That is, until the kid next door was having a banging birthday party. Despite this, fate would align Jeff with the 3 bullies he had previously faced, except this time, they were intent on finishing Jeff off permanently. The bullies arrived with firearms and held those at the party at gunpoint as they began their assaults on Jeff. It would not go nearly as well as they might have hoped, however, as Jeff was able to fight them off and even punch their leader in the chest until he died. Despite that setback, the most resourceful of the 3 would capitalize on the vodka and bleach that had coated Jeff's face over the course of the fight and light the kid ablaze. The aftermath of it all left Jeff in a shattered mental state, certainly not helped by the fact that the fire had singed most of his hair and turned his once normal skin into a pale, leathery kind. Seeing what he had become on the outside was the last push needed for his inner monster to take over. The night he was released from the hospital, Jeff would remove his eyelids and slash an everlasting smile into his cheeks before slaughtering his family. Jeffrey Woods was no more. There was only Jeff the Killer. Like many creepypasta characters, Jeff has some ridiculous feats, like being able to slice a cop from chest to chin, fend off 3 bullies at once, rip a towel rack off a wall, and even chop off one of Slenderman's tendrils. But through his journeys, Jeff would often fall back on his psycho durability. Much like a sponge with water, Jeff the Killer knows how to soak up pain, singeing his eyelids off, impalement, blunt force trauma, and even severe blood loss. All that being said, however, Jeff is ultimately just a man. When hit over the head by Slenderman, he was nearly knocked unconscious, and was fully cold-clocked by Jane the Killer with a hammer. Not only that, but Jeff is terribly hot-headed and can be baited into bad situations when taunted by opponents. Despite his shortcomings, however, Jeff will never stop chasing you. If you get away, you are not free from his wrath. If you interfere, you will not keep your life. And if you awake in the middle of the night, pray that the long-smiled man of dark eyes isn't in your room, for if he is, the end is closer than you might think. Well, after taking everything into account, from strengths to weaknesses and everything in between, the winner is Michael Myers. While Jeff certainly wouldn't be a pushover, he's not exactly going to beat the shape. In the current canon, Michael has shown that he's simply too strong to be beaten. Jeff at 15 years old could punch a bully until they spew blood everywhere, whereas Michael at 61 could cave a man's head in with one stomp. All the same, in terms of durability, Jeff just slightly edges it, albeit with feats from non-canonical spin-offs. Now we have to ask ourselves who reaches the other's maximum pain intake sooner, and for me that's going to be Michael Myers. There are no games with Michael, and ultimately I believe he'll be more capable of reaching Jeff's pain threshold sooner than Jeff could with his. That being said, Jeff's youthful hot-headedness would likely put him in a position to land shots quicker than Michael, so he wouldn't be knocked over with little difficulty. At the end of the day, however, Michael Myers would be able to handle the damage while working through Jeff's reserves, and thus the winner is the shape.